Hey everybody, welcome back to me ranking every single unit in Wargame Dragon, part 2 of the transport vehicles. Before we get into it, I briefly added a line down here, essentially saying the transports are rated regardless of what infantry they transport, because as you will probably see, and as I've also mentioned every now and then last week, certain transports just don't come with certain infantry, let's say 10-point line infantry, and that actually makes them weaker. And so that's why some transports might be a lot higher or a lot lower than they would be if they had access to other infantry. And I think especially today there will be a couple of those. And that's all there's to say really. So let's continue on. Nunun, that's a 5-point Jeep. That's a 5-point Jeep. Also, hold on a second. This one has actually even worse optics than the other ones, right? Look at this. Bad is the worst optics that you can get. Excuse me. The M35 has poor. This M35 is poor. This one is poor. So clearly Israel is underpowered and needs to be buffed. Also has worse autonomy. God damn. Poor. I'm obviously joking. Doesn't matter. Okay, this is actually interesting because this is a transport available only for the Danish reservists. So this is a 5-point wheel transport. It has 1 armor, but 5 HP. It's such a weird. I'm not even sure if I can properly rate this because this thing is so freaking inconsistent and weird. It's, I think, the only 5-point wheel transport that is like not one of those 5-point jeeps. And the fact that it has armor but still only 5 HP is also so incredibly rare. I think there might be 1 or 2 units that also have that. It's just, I don't even know what to say. Like, in a vacuum, it is a 5-point wheel trans, but it isn't piss poor off road, so I guess it should be like A tier, if not even S tier. It is interesting to say the least. I'm gonna put it in A tier for now, but sorry again, but like, I don't even know. This is one of the strangest units. But let's go on. This we had a Humvee. We also already had when we did the HMV and the Hamer down there. I guess I should, adjust the name properly. Marder 1, there we go. The Marder 1 is actually S tier. It has 4 front armor for 15 points. The RH202, which is one of the better autocannons you can get, especially if you want to spam this. However, it doesn't come with 10-point line infantry, which is why it's really not seen that often. That's really the main reason. If Germany had a 10-point, 10 HP rifle infantry, let's say if Jäger were 10 points, had a basic MG and an M72 Law, and the Marder 1, you would see a lot of Marder 1s. And it would make Eurocore ridiculously strong, because if there's one thing Eurocore is weak at, it's direct fire support. Like direct, high HG output fire support a la BTRTs, a la, M1 Abrams plus rifleman spam, BMPs, Merkava IIAs, Zeldas, stuff like that. BVPs, KTs. Obviously, I have a lot of other things to make up for that, but that's not what this video is about. So, yeah, because keep in mind, the BVP M80A, right? It has this Marder autocannon, right? The late one. I guess this is a better way to compare, right? You get 10% extra accuracy, 5% more stabilizer, which is of course huge, right? You get essentially a 50% extra accuracy base, which is massive, given that it's the highest rate of fire you have on autocannons, right? There's no autocannon on ground vehicles with a higher rate of fire. So that massive accuracy boost does a lot, of course. But the BVP only has 3 front armor and 1 side armor. 4 front and 2 side, and don't underestimate having only 1 side armor. It means you instantly get popped by like AMX sense and and especially if you're not just a 5-pointer but an actual IFV, that's of course a bit annoying. But sure, you have lower accuracy, but you also have like 4 front armor now. That's even better, especially against rocket bots. So yeah, Marder 1 actually S tier, honestly, but just held back because you get only with Pentagrams or Deckungsgruppe. Now it's not a bad combination with either of the units, right? But it just severely weakens the package. Once again, it's not bad by any means. I'm not saying like don't ever take the Marder-I because it doesn't come with 10-point line infantry. It's still good. It's just not as ridiculous as it would be otherwise. Like, all three of the combinations are fine to use. Like I used Marder-Is in Deckungsgruppe, I used Marder-Is and Pentagrams over Pentagrams 90 before, right? So they're all fine. Marder 101, now of course, not being a DLC unit or the French vehicle type MX-10 with the Milan, cannot fire ATGM and autocannon at the same time. For 5 points you get a Milan 1. It's okay. It's, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if this supplements or doesn't quite work with the Marder. On the one hand, you get something to fire at long range, and for close range you have your autocannon. On the other hand, you know, you anyway prefer to be close range, so maybe the ATGM is kind of useless. I don't know, it's just such a... I just rarely use this, right? And for the same price, you get the 182 that has just much higher base accuracy. So honestly, I think I'm just gonna rate this C and the other one B tier because that extra accuracy is crazy, of course. And then we have the 183 with a Milan 2. It's fine. I wouldn't recommend using it outside of mech deck because such an ATGM vehicle is fairly specialized, and in all the decks that West Germany is included in, also kind of hard to fit in. Plus, of course, you get a Marder too. So yeah, outside of mech deck, it's just hard to fit in, and but in mech it's fine. Plus, of course, given that they come with Pentagrams, you get them on the lead, so the Milan 2 will have some very good accuracy, and you even get more front and side armor. It's actually quite tanky. Would have been cool to have the Marder 1A4 CV or something like that. Anyway, Marder 2. This is actually not that easy to rate. I think once again, though, I think it is S tier actually, because it is once more just held back by the fact that you don't get 10-point line infantry with it. Simple as that. The nice thing about this is it is in such a place. It doesn't feel quite the same role as the CV90 for me. The CV90 is just your all-round fairly heavy IFE that does good infantry fire support and deals with virtually anything that isn't a tank. The Marder 2 also deals with virtually anything that isn't a tank. Not as good as fire support, or, you know, I mean, it's probably better against vehicles, but not as good as against infantry, which is fine. It's still good enough, but it just have to have the burst damage to like be very effective at very close range, because then it's actually threatened to get killed by infantry. So you want to generally be out of infantry AT range. It's essentially the type of unit that, well, your opponent will have to get a tank to deal with this most of the time, right? CV90 not so much, because the CV90 just doesn't have quite a long range DPS against vehicles. But on the other hand, it's better against like anything else, which is infantry and helicopters. But yeah, this I think in a very early beta version that I didn't have access to, because this was before I was YouTube famous. I'm of course kidding. I believe this used to have 2,100 meter range, which was absolutely hilarious, or would be hilarious. I don't think it would be like crazy strong, but I guess it would just be like maybe like a bit inconsistent, arguably. I don't know. I don't care. Yeah, let's go on. 5-point drag, 5-point drag. Please let me know in the comments if you've either actually seen or used this unit, because I don't remember the last time I've seen, let alone used this unit. I've seen it before, don't get me wrong, but I think the last time I did was probably before DLC. I'm not even joking. At least the last time I remember seeing it was before DLC. I believe it was even when Wanson was even in ranked still. So why am I saying this? Well, you have to keep in mind, let me just turn off to tier this for a second. The Krak comes with a single squad, that is those SPz, and nobody uses them, right? Because for one, they're just not particularly good in and of itself. Even compared to every other napalm squads, they're not particularly good. Although back then they were probably comparatively better, because that was before all the napalm things got standardized to 4AG. So I believe they still had 5 and the others 4 or 3, or maybe they had 4 and the others 3. I don't know, but they're not very good. And if you wanted flamers in Poland, everyone would just use SPz Sturmowi anyway, right? Because they're fancy shock squads. So that's already one reason why nobody uses this. The other one is just that it's absolutely garbage. Like, it is incredibly garbage, to put it mildly. What you have to keep in mind is this is low caliber autocannon. Low caliber autocannons tend to have low range, same range as the Marder, right? But you have only 15% accuracy and 5% stabilizer, and you have a much lower rate of fire. Now over a minute, very easy actually, the Marder has a autocannon or rate of fire of 100 rounds per minute, right? 100 actual shots that can deal actual damage, right? I know it says 749 and some people get confused, but that's just the ammo consumption. To put it in other words, the maximum of HE damage a Marder can deal without critting is 100 per minute. The Krak has a rate of fire of 60, which, having a rate of fire of 60 on an autocannon is not inherently bad. It's actually a rather decent autocannon. It's not amazing, but it's acceptable. It's of course horrible if you have the lowest possible range for autocannons, and the lowest possible accuracy, as well as the lowest possible AP and HE. Now granted, there's like only one autocannon that has more than 1 HE. Still, there's nothing. Virtually every set is as bad as possible, except for the suppression that is a bit higher than the one on the Marder one. And only now I actually realize that the suppression apparently equals caliber in millimeters times 2. That's actually hilarious. Except of course for MGs. Though let me actually check for a second if this is the... Oh no, apparently the HE and AP suppression are the same. They are. Okay. But yeah, this thing for 15 points is actually really bad. It's like, you know, if you had like literally no other way of getting any kind of autocannons, it'll probably be like somewhat useful, but you know, I'm kinda want to put this in E tier, but I think that would be a bit too harsh. We had this with the 5-pointer thingy magic in the C tier right there. Nagmachon, not a big fan, because not only it has 2 MGs, which is nice, but it's only quote unquote only 2 MGs, but it's also really slow. Of course, it does make up with it being, I believe that's a Centurion, right? Like a Centurion hull? Is that what it is? I mean, it's certainly slow as well. And the Achzarit is a T55, I believe, right? I believe that's a Centurion hull with like a fancy ass turret, if you want to call it a turret. More like a tower. It's hard to rate. It could be like good if you could get like reservists in that. That'd be hilarious and maybe a bit broken. Maybe not. I don't know. But like getting in with 5-point infantry is what I mean. Especially if they have 10 HP. And you can, I guess, support. I suppose you could get this with like for meat shield purposes, right? At 8 armor, you will start to get one shot by 22 AP. You will survive 2 15 AP shots, but not 16 AP anymore. Which, for example, is Rovite 90, Sochungsu 90, Yakari 90. So it's not incredibly survivable against infantry. It's of course very good against autocannons. It will survive a spike shot, which is actually really good. It's minimum armor you need to survive the spike. But I think it's just so slow. But there's still like a very big question mark, you know, because I very rarely use it. I've seen it used very rarely. Just hard to properly rate. Achzarit, I would say the same thing up until very recently, where I've seen Nick, the man, use it fairly successfully. Outside of that one thing, the one game that I casted, you know, even more than that. Um, it's fine. It's 10 hour now, so you need 24 AP to one shot, which is VDP 90, for example. It's of course even more sturdy against anything really. It is faster now and has a third MG, so that's nice. So, I think it's B tier. Like in the past, I would have said but like these days, if you're playing a mech deck, I'd be like, you know what, sure, I guess put a card in there. It's nothing too wrong with that. You will get double tapped by Carl Gustavs though, still. And Carl Gustavs are fairly common on blue force, especially against like Scandi and like Landshut. Merkava IIA, despite all the nerfs, it just is still S tier easily. It's like a BMPT, but arguably better, arguably worse. You know, it's more expensive, but it has like a proper tank gun. You kind of have to micro the tank gun, but ideally that isn't your only tank around, so that you can go more easy on those tank shots. Still, though, even if it didn't have a tank gun, it would still honestly be decent. Without the tank gun, it's of course much weaker, but it's still like 18 armor and a grenade launcher. That in and of itself is already very useful. It even comes with medium optics. I mean, look at it that way, right? This is an M1 IP with one more front armor and a grenade launcher for 10 points more. Of course, you lose a lot of rounds on a gun, which when it had 14 for a while wasn't that big of a deal. At only 9 rounds, I admit it can certainly happen. But if you're decent in the game and like somewhat micro it, that's not absolutely horrible. It's of course annoying, but like it's not like suddenly makes a tank absolutely worthless. Just a bit of micro. It's a bit slow, but it's very tanky outside of to the side, but still like got a good amount of back and top armor. So even against like HE shells, it's actually surprisingly survivable, and clusters as well. Although once again, the speed is its downfall in that case. But it's just, yeah, I don't think I have to elaborate more. It's a 5-pointer. It's a 5-pointer. And M135, one of the very few 10-point vehicles with like a proper gun. With proper gun, I mean like anything that's more than an MG. It of course still has only one armor, but it does have the Marder 1 autocannon, which is a very good autocannon. Especially if you can get it for 10 points and 10-point line infantry, like Norway can. It is I've seen Greyhound put this in a Scandi deck, in his ranked Scandi deck, with the main reason that it's like good for against helo rushes, right? Because helo rushes tend to be one of the best things against hero rushes is like having a lot of cheap stuff to shoot at them, right? What is cheaper than, you know, a 10-point autocannon vehicle, really? Of course, you want to have something shoot at it that is reasonable at killing, and autocannons, especially in like forests where helicopters can't make use of their long range, are very good for that, or just base defense in general, even. Of course, that's with only one armor, which if it had more would obviously be incredibly ridiculous. But honestly, it's certainly A tier. Just the Scandi infantry tab is just so filled with stuff that you don't see it that often these days. So maybe I should put it in blue, but I don't think it's that rare to see it. But you know, with CV90s, with the good 5-point spam they have, with the STRF and the Eric's units, you know, that don't have access to these transports, it's hard to. Even in Scandi Mech, I feel like I wish I had more infantry tabs because there's so much stuff I want to fit in. OTM5, I guess, falls in a 5-pointer category, even though it's a bit worse, but I'm too lazy to add it. 5-point category. OTM60PB used to be a bit ridiculous. It used to have, I believe, 1400 meter range and maybe more AP as well. Not certain on that. That thing fires its recoilless rifles in a burst of 2. So right, it shoots twice and then has to reload for a longer time. It is of course a bit slow. It does have 2 MGs on top of that, so the damage output is actually not too unreasonable. 10 AP heat means it will double tap 2 armor, and of course a one-shot 1 armor. It's fallen a bit out of favor, but it's honestly just because the BVP is just so ridiculous. That's honestly the main reason why it's just not seen very often. The BVP M80A is just so good. Tab 71 is essentially a BTR 60PB, but it does get the late KPVT, you know, the one with 20% accuracy. And I'm kinda inclined to say that kind of makes it C tier. In certain circumstances, and that's, you know, the circumstances we generally rate them on, I would say. And this is like with elite infantry, right? If you pay already like 30-35 points for your elite squad, then paying 5 points extra for something that is just as survivable, assuming the other option is also 1 armor, but you get the late KPVT plus being elite infantry, you're a veteran, or maybe even elite given the spec deck, that KPVT becomes dangerous. So in that case, paying 5 points extra, like 8 or 9 times per game at irregular intervals, not a big deal, but can have a nice payoff. So yeah, that's just a 5-pointer. OT62B. What a fancy camo. You cannot see that, but look at those weird lines. You don't see this very often because it's just not very good. Like 8 RPM, it has more range than the OTM 60BB. It fires 7 rounds per minute at 20% accuracy, which is half the accuracy. You have more AP, but the accuracy, dude, it's just, it's no. Don't like meme around with it if you want, but if you want to try hard, I wouldn't bother with this. Vydra-I actually has the same autocannon than the Krak. It has 2 armor. It does have 2 armor, you know, so that is, I guess, its saving grace. That makes it like not absolute dog shit, but there's just no reason to use it when you're at the Vydra-II, which unfortunately gets an availability penalty despite being essentially a worse KAF V25. Yeah, that's and it doesn't affect Entente at all. And you know, the availability penalty, as far as I know, didn't already existed before, you know, Entente was the thing, right? So I'm not saying Yuchen did this to nerf Eastern Bloc and, you know, not hurt Entente, right? But the fact that it gives an availability penalty on the Monostrelzi, Entente doesn't care, but it hurts Eastern Bloc even more, which already is like half that just because of the existence of the Red 4 DLC decks. Yeah. It's a fine transport, but it's KFE25, but it has 5% less accuracy. Same rate of fire, same range, same AP, but just less accuracy. But it's like 1/6 less, right? Or rather, the other way around, the KFE gets 1/5 more. It's actually a direct comparison, real quick. Yeah. It also has lower suppression a bit, but it's not that big of a deal. It's also a bit slower in the KFV. Yeah, the Vydra I meant. But I'm not gonna apologize. The accuracy is actually not irrelevant. OT64A, I mean, that's essentially a BTR 60PB. The OT64C, you know, it is only Malutka, but it is a free ATGM. And there have been numerous occasions where that thing, you know, was trying to get a piece. The A piece was running away, but the Malutka could still fire, and the Malutka killed it. So don't underestimate free Malutkas. That's just a 5-pointer. It's weird transport. Oh, you poor thing. You have once again that same garbage autocannon as a Krak, stat-wise, of course. IRL, I assume it's not the same thing, but you never know. However, of course, it has a 4 front armor, which is a lot. So essentially, this is a Marder one, but with a worse autocannon. And of course, it also doesn't get access to 10-point infantry because I believe there's like only one type of 10-point infantry you get, and that's the reservists. Yeah, pretty sad. But honestly, the 2 extra free front armor doesn't suddenly make this great. Like, the autocannon is still so bad. It is generally still just C tier. STRF 9040, good vehicle. Good, it's just good. I definitely prefer the CV90 over it. Let's just briefly compare these two. CV90 of course has lower AP, I believe also lower range. But it has more front armor, or more armor around, or more front and side. And a higher rate of fire, which is honestly the biggest. A bit lower stabilizer, a bit lower suppression, but I think especially that rate of fire, right? Let me give you proper numbers. STRF fires 37.5 rounds per minute. The CV90 fires 50. Do the math yourself. I'm not gonna embarrass myself with anything right now. But yeah, that's obviously a huge difference, and I feel like the CV90 is still very much very formidable against vehicles, despite low range and 1 lower AP. But that extra rate of fire, especially against infantry, is so noticeable. But the SRF is still a very good IV, and in mech deck I like to have both, just to have like access to something that is better against just simply vehicles. It's just a Jeep. It's a Jeep Promet. Essentially a worse Scratchet, and honestly only gets 8 tier from me because it does have only 1 front armor. Also not see I think you see it rarely. That's mainly like Baltic or not Anton, Eastern Bloc mech, because you get the Grom, the manpads in there, and that's I think the only unit they actually carry. Oh, they also carry like some garbage manpad as well, I suppose. And that's really the only time you see that. It is still a very good transport, but just offensively not as strong as a Scratchet. And it only gets a PKT, I believe the Scratchet gets a quad PKT. Still, though, very useful to have. Ramreki, we had that in the Stealth Recon Transport. Scott 2, we had 2A. Literally an OT64, or rather the OT64 is literally a Scott 2A. I don't know who created them. I'm inclined to believe maybe the polished it because they've more I don't know. I think someone said that recently. They said that like a copy of each other, or like licensed production. I knew that beforehand, but I don't remember which one was the original creator. Scott 2 AP does get 5% higher accuracy, so it's essentially like between a PB and a Tab 71, right? Still 1 front armor, still a KBVT, but instead of 10 or 20, you get 15% accuracy. Screw you, you'll still be in a D tier. We had this. We had this with the B tier 50, I believe. And this is literally just a B tier 50. It doesn't have front armor, so I have to do it. Hold up, did I actually skip the OT62A? Might have skipped the yeah, because there's actually 2 front armor. Honestly, probably in the same tier as SPW50. It is a B tier 50, but it has a better engine. However, it doesn't have a 50 cal anymore. So yeah. And don't underestimate speed on 5-pointers. This is a basic 5-pointer. This is a BTR 60, so let's write it down. Let me actually check if I'm still. Yeah, everything's all right. SPW 70 we had as the BTR 70. It is in this tab, is it? Yeah, it is. SPW 80 we had as the BTR 80 in the B tier, fittingly enough. BMP1. This is actually possibly the worst BMP1, because you could also just get a Manutka for free. But yeah, okay, let me put it this way. I was gonna say how the mighty have fallen, but let's be real. For the majority of Wargame, this thing was garbage, right? There were only like a couple of patches where this thing was 10 points, right? The long time before that, and ever since it got nerfed back to 15, it has been garbage. I mean, Nick still likes to hold on to them and use them for the modules, and maybe I'm underrating them a bit, like, but I just don't see them being particularly useful. because you have to keep in mind the Grom, right? I mean, it's a heat gun, right? But it has poor range, poor accuracy, acceptable rate of fire, but still like only 2 HE, and there's no 50 cal or other MG on top of that that helps with stunning or stuff like that. So the actual burst damage against infantry isn't that amazing. What was amazing is you could get it at 10 points with more than one front armor. It used to have 2 when it was 10 points, I believe, and maybe even 2 sides back then. I don't remember. And it had like more than an MG, right? That was the good thing about this. Now at 15 points, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, right? When I got, I have to be careful what I say here. Actually, maybe I shouldn't say this. Yeah, maybe I'll not say this just in case. I'm sorry for saying that, but I probably shouldn't say that. It's nothing huge. I don't think I'm gonna suddenly. I was about to leak some crazy shit, but just in case, I'd rather just not say that. BMP2, a bit of a set. It's like a Marder 1, right? 4 front, 2 side. Good autocannon. It has the same range actually. Like the early 2A42 also has only 1500 meter range. It has low. This is, I believe, 60 RPM. This is actually like a worse. Yeah, that's that, but worse, right? You have like 1 step less range, and it's fine. It's a fine IFV, but like you have an okay autocannon, but you also like 20 points, and even I'm not saying it's like an unfair price, but it just could get something to be a bit better. Hold up, what about the other BMP2s that we had so far? How do they also have that? Oh no, this is actually that and the Finnish one are actually the only ones with just the autocannons. The other BMP2s, they had the Conquerors, like, you know, like the German one, right? Exact same one? Yeah, it is. Did we rank the Finnish one already? Yeah, we had to. This is a BMP1. Yeah, BMP2 Finn. There it is. There it is. BMP2 probably C tier. Yeah, it is. Man, the Germans and their names, am I right? Stalwart, we had this with the Amphibien. This is exactly the same thing. Saxon, we had this, we had Stolly. I know I used to say Stolly, and I don't know why, but yeah, Stolly, yeah, I said it again. Jeep, TGB. Hopefully didn't rate this already, but honestly, A tier, easy, because it is a 5-point truck, but it has a 100 km off-road speed. Just yeah, it's incredibly fast and 5 points. Sure, it has no armor, no MG, but it's 5 points. Especially like for the, you know, it's noticeable how useful these are if you look at Vydra-I Jäger, right? Because that gives mechanized access to some very fast truck infantry. Like Vydra-I Jäger aren't amazing, but they're fine. They're also a nice combination with Norlandsjäger. Keeps the price down. Tier 4 and 5, once again, how to mighty have fallen. When Commonwealth was meta for a fairly short time. Same with Eastern Bloc, right? I guess for more or less around the same time as the BMP1 was good, because they were like meta for like more or less the same time. Like top tier meta, I guess you could say, in 1 versus 1s. This used to be 15 points with 2 armor. Now it's 20 points with 3 armor and medium optics, which severely hurt it. It's fine, right? It's fine. But of course, being 20 versus 15 points is a massive deal, especially if this gets spent with just 10-point infantry. If this came with your 35-point elite squads, then this probably would have been a buff, right? Because them not being spammed means that them individually being stronger for 5 points more is a nice trade-off. Topas is the same thing as the OT62A. Topas 2A is the same thing as the OT62B. And the Topas 2AP has a KPVT instead. Can I just say no? It's not worth it. It's not worth it. If it was like 20%, maybe, but even still. Fuchs Milan is actually very interesting. Or to balance the favor whenever I don't know how to properly rate this. Okay, enough of that. Fuchs Milan. Milan have won for 5 points. Actually quite a good deal. Ideally, you have this with like elite squads or something like that. You know, squads you buy one of like here and there, right? You don't spam. That's where they're best, because having some around here and there is where they're ideal. Not on the front lines, more like the sides of the map where not much is happening. Deal with IFVs and the like. And that's where they're good at. B tier, yeah. Maybe they could be A tier. I wouldn't like, you know, argue with you if you said no, they're A tier. And I'm like, okay, sure, maybe they are, you know. Vydra-I. It's once again the Marder 1 autocannon, you know, stat clone, 20% accuracy, 100 RPM, 100 true RPM, I guess I should say. It has 1 armor, it's fast, it's amphibious. A tier. Maybe it should only be, yeah, no, I think it's A tier. It honestly does best with like shock and elite infantry, stuff you get every now and then. Actually, that's fine everywhere, right? You can spam it with 10.9 infantry. It's nice on nearly anything, right? I used it, maybe I still do it in my deck, I'm not sure, with the Milan 1 in my Eurocard spec deck, right? Just have plenty of Vydra-20s around, and then gather like 20 of them and rush down. No, I don't do that. VTT323, kind of like the Topas IIA, right? But instead of the KPVT, we got the CPT, which has a much higher RPM. To give you numbers, I guess I just look up the BTR 70. KPVT fires 51 rounds per minute. VTT fires 76. I believe it also has a higher suppression. It does, much higher in fact, and also increase helicopter range. Oh, does it Topas? 1 second. Oh yeah, I forgot. I was mentioning it earlier, and then I thought maybe I just misremembered, but I actually remembered fully, and I just can't read. The 2 AP, of course, gets increased heal range for the KPVT, but who cares? Legit, it's so irrelevant in that case. For other units, it might not be, but for that, it was. For the VTT, it's also not irrelevant, because it's even 1750, which, you know, don't underestimate that. I wouldn't spam them, but they are okay, right? They have 2 front armor, at least. They're reasonably fast, and the CPTU is definitely better than the KPVT. Even though, you know, the KPVT on the Topas IIA gets essentially 50% extra accuracy, I still think this is much better. Also, if you keep in mind the much higher suppression value. In this case, yeah, this is not a free Malutka, so paying 5 points for Malutka is not a good deal. Virtually never. If it's like such a bad Malutka. I guess it's like a 14 AP, and it is probably faster actually than the, you know, horrible Malutkas that you get on like the OT64s. Still, I wouldn't recommend. Hwasong-Chong is a very interesting one. Of course, essentially the only transport that kind of allows you to have a more or less normal unit opener while being very well prepared for a healer rush. For 10 points, I suppose you get like an Igla, which is great. It's just very hard to rate because these days I don't even use it anymore. But honestly, I think it's still 8. It would honestly be best if you got it with like ATGM teams or Manpa teams even. That's where it would probably be like really good. So maybe it is S tier. It's very hard to actually rate. Being a prototype and only in Red Dragons, and nobody plays Red Dragons, and Red Dragons already has so good AA that you just don't put it in your deck very often anymore. Quite a dilemma I'm in. Okay, this is actually S tier. Like genuinely S tier. This is actually an incredibly strong unit. You get 2 armor, a good autocannon, right? It's not quite KFV like, but and this it is, yeah, it's not quite KFV like, but it's still a very good autocannon. Not very good, but pretty good autocannon. Yeah, it is like a good autocannon on 2 armor wheels, good off-road speed, amphibious. If this was in Eurocore, if this was in Entente, if this was in US, Israel, USSR, you would see this so often. This is actually a quite ridiculous unit. but you know, it only comes in dragons, and it only comes with like Shanxi 85, not even the base ones, and Tankeshasho, both versions, maybe only 85, which you know isn't a bad combination, but Tankeshasho 85 themselves aren't just that good. And Red Dragons itself, of course, sucks. I mean, this is essentially an SFPC. Although the SLF is amphibious, if I remember correctly, it's still like 2 armor, right? This thing used to be 3 front and side armor, by the way. The Musti, you get a 16 AP heat gun. You must means 1-shot 2 armor. Also, I believe this is not how that should go through the thing up there. That's not how this works. And a 50 cal, you're fast. Amphibious, only 1 armor though. It's fine. It's fine, right? I mean, it just gets double tap, but against, you know, other wheeled openers that, you know, might not have like wheeled stuff as an aiming sense or KTs, you know, this will just easily one-shot most wheeled vehicles. KRKK, honestly, like a safe deal. It's not as good as a WAPC, right? The WAPC does have 2 armor, but it doesn't. The armor is actually not that helpful most of the time. Like, sure, you might just crit an enemy IFV or something to death if you're a bit lucky, but if something with an AP gun fires at either of them, they're both probably just gonna die. This has also 2 armor and a Browning. And I just messed up my recording, so hopefully I'll just edit them together now. This is also 2 armor and a Browning. So I suppose this is also gonna be B tier. I mean, it has worse autonomy, and no, I'll put it in C tier. Why? It has worse autonomy and only 1 side armor. And I value having more than 1 side armor quite a lot on transports. It's not important for when they fight, it's important when they're supposed to get to the fight. This is a very good 5-point transport. Yeah, it's a very good 5-point transport. It has 2 armor, 2 front, 2 side. It is very fast, it's amphibious, and it has a 50 cal. This is essentially a Vydra-II. And Vydra-II also has 5% less accuracy. Yep. It's still like a good transport, don't get me wrong. But it doesn't have the 30% accuracy that the KFE25 has. Even though it's the same gun, by the way, with the KBA25. This is just a 5-pointer. This is a BMP one. Yeah. It does have 16 armor. 16 AP, sorry, on the... It does have 16 AP, But it's still M class, right? Not Psy class. It's M class or MCLOS. Are you supposed to say MCLOS or M class? I don't know. I'm just gonna say M class because it's faster. It's still M class, which means it's slow AF. Some of the other Malyutkas upgraded ones are SAC class, so they're not garbage as slow, but this one isn't. So 5-point truck, 5-point truck. This is a 5-point thing. That's a CSD 63C. Same thing as the YPR. This is why Red Dragons actually has good spam infantry, right? But yeah, a ZSC 90. Actually also S tier. Similarly to the Marder one. Even has medium optics on top of that, which is crazy. Yeah, 4 armor, 2 side, good autocannon, and medium optics and very fast. And yeah, those are just, I can't scroll on further, right? But those are just stuff that we already have under like an umbrella term with the 10-point. We transport with 1 front armor as well as the. So this is the thing. And where's the recon 50 points recon transports? There we go. With the CZZ 55. And that's already the vehicle transports. Next up, I'll either do basic vehicles or helicopter transports. We'll see. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. As always, let me know what you think. Let me know whether you have ever seen the Krak. And yeah, hopefully see you next time. Later.